So this little project, it's not really a project, it's just a rundown on a DA5300ES. This is Sony 7-channel amplifier. So I've had to buy a replacement. This is basically an exact copy of a Sony replacement remote control. These actually came with 2 remote controls. This is sort of the mini one. And I quite like this amplifier. It's 7-channel, I think it's 100 watts a channel into an 8 ohm load. You can see we've got a switch between menu mode as display, which means I can control it via the front panel, and that volume knob is very stiff. It does mimic it on the TV there, but if I try and do any menu items, you've actually got to switch between GUI mode and screen mode. So the screen mode's actually not too bad at all. It's quite a nice display for the age of the amplifier. So it really is intended to be driven entirely from the... Gee, that volume knob is stiff. It really is intended to be driven entirely by the remote. So you can see I'm flicking around there, go to settings, got all the usual auto calibration, go to speaker setup, go to the speaker connections. You can see that this is set up using these Onkyo 5.1 test speakers, and it's all pretty logically set up. So it's quite a nice unit. You've got hard switches at the front for speakers, A and B, off, A and B, and it tells you on the display as well. As I said, the volume knob is really quite hard to turn, and it's not motorized, so if you notice, if I turn the volume, it does reflect the change on the screen. The sound, I've had a bit of a play with this with a good old Technics CD player, a bit of Tracy Chapman and a bit of yellow. The sound is really, really, really nice. It's got heaps of grunt. It is a 1080p, it's not 4K. The screen display is pretty good, so if I press menu, it looks like you've got to switch between basically an on-screen mode here and a display mode on the actual amplifier. So what that means is if I'm using the rotary volume knob on the amp, I can't use any of the menu functions. It's either controlling via the screen or controlling via the front of the amplifier. But it's a pretty nice setup. All this stuff's easily available. You can go into sound field. So I press play. And every time you flick through, it changes. Neural THX, pretty nice. So heaps of variability in sound field, more than you ever need, but they all do. So the tuner's pretty nice. What you do need is you need a remote control. You basically can't drive this thing without a remote control. You've got heaps of equalization presets, and you know, for the age of this machine, that one's flat. So this is the only one that I've tinkered with. It's really, really, really nice and quite variable. You can also set up multi-zone for B speakers using a 12-volt trigger for a second amp. You've got AV sync, which is pretty sophisticated. So you can put in a digital delay between speech and video. And basically, the only resolution you've got is 1080p there. And then you've got HDMI signs and you've got system signs there. So all pretty nice. So you can flick between use the source. You want to go back to tuner, for example. So that all works pretty well. AM. The tuner's pretty nice to set up actually. So the only thing it doesn't have, because it's too old, is it doesn't have any internet connectivity or any network connectivity. You've got manual tuning. Now nicely in tuning mode you've got either auto tuning, you've got direct tuning, so you can enter a frequency, or you can go between the saved stations. And of course there's plenty more. I don't even think I've got 30 stations where I am. Now unfortunately it's not a rolling menu, so you've got to go up. You can't just keep going from 30 back to 1. So it's not that smart. It's kind of a bit of a 20s or a 10s innovation, I think, in stereos. But still, no complaints at all. And what you can do is if you're listening and you go into options, you can go FM mode is simply mono or stereo. You can also change the memory, you can change the sound field, So, which is basically the decoding program. Well, the other thing that you can do is you can go into changing individual equalization, which I showed you before, or you can change position. Now, this is really a bit of a weird innovation, so you've got a bit hard to see in the glare, but you've got position 1, position 2, position 3. So position 3, position 2, position 1, I'm not actually sure what that means, because I haven't looked at the menu, manual. So I'll go back to menu, position 1, because that's... So, a pretty nice amp. The front panel is very, very nice. So if we come around the back here, back panel's laid out pretty well. Here are all our opticals, our SP diffs. We've got a couple of digital ins. We've got RCA's, even ancient S-video, showing the age of the amp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 HDMI ins, and these horrible speaker binding posts that are really quite fiddly to use. Got sub out there, and plenty of connectivity. That's a D port for, pretty sure that's a plug-in device for iPod control. And then you've got different infrared remote inputs and RS-232. So most of the functions are controllable on the front panel, but not all of them. So if I want to change, I've got to change on the menu, so I can go into display. So you've got to change between screen mode and menu mode. And then when you're in display mode, it means I can change inputs here, change the dimmer, for example, change the display, so the sound code, the volume, the frequency, and the decoding. Go to 2-channel direct, go to, that's automatic music decoding, so all of that sort of stuff. So a pretty nice amplifier. And would you believe it, I picked this up at a garage sale for $18, and it was worth $1,700 when it was new. $1,700. And back in the day, it would have been it was absolutely the flagship, this DA5300ES. So the ES series are Sony's flagship, and the fact that it's got neural THX, whatever neural means, but it's got DTS HD and True HD, so it's still a competent receiver for home theatre, even by today's standards. And as I said, if you get the remote, she's apples. It's quite a good amp.